Good day, learners! In today's topic, we will talk about the historical and legal foundations of education in the Philippines. We will discover how education in the Philippines was put into practice and what are the changes of the educational system starting in the pre-colonial period until the post-colonial period. So without much further ado, let's get right into the discussion. Pre-Hispanic education was not formal. Education was oral, practical, and hands-on. The objective was basically to promote reverence and adoration of Bathala, respect for laws, customs, and authorities represented by parents and elders. There was no established written curriculum, since the blueprint of what children ought to learn is imprinted in the culture born of their needs and traditions. Despite the presence of writing system which is called the Alibata, there were no books because things important to them like songs, poetry, drama, epics, and words of wisdom had been passed on through oral traditions from past centuries. Formal education was brought during the Spanish occupation in the Philippines, which was conducted by religious orders. Upon learning the local languages and writing systems, the Spaniards began teaching Christianity, the Spanish language, and the Spanish culture. This religious culture opened the first schools and universities as early as the 16th century. The Spaniards also introduced printing presses to produce books in Spanish and Tagalog, sometimes using baybayin. The Educational Decree of 1863 provided a free public education system in the Philippines managed by the government. The decree mandated the establishment of at least one primary school for boys and one for girls in each town under the responsibility of the municipal government. Among those who benefited from free public education system were a burgeoning group of intellectuals called the Ilustrados or the Enlightened Ones, and all of whom played vital roles in the propaganda movement ultimately inspired the founding of the Katipunan. The defeat of Spain by American forces paved the way for Aguinaldo's republic under the revolutionary government. The schools maintained by Spain for more than 3 centuries were closed for the time being, but were reopened on August 29, 1898 by the Secretary of Interior. The Burgos Institute in Malolos and the Literary University of the Philippines were established. A system of free and compulsory elementary education was established by the Malolos Constitution. An adequate, secularized, and free public school system during the first decade of American rule was established upon the recommendation of the Sherman Commission. Free primary instruction that trained the people for duties of citizenship and avocation was enforced by the Taft Commission per instructions of President McKinley. Chaplains and non-commissioned officers were assigned to teach using English as the medium of instruction. The Americans used education as a vehicle for its program of benevolent assimilation. In 1901, highly centralized public school system was installed by the Philippine Commission under the virtue of Act No. 74. This act created a heavy shortage for teachers, so the Philippine Commission authorized the Secretary of Public Instruction to bring 600 teachers from USA, and these are the Thomasites, which are soldiers that teach the spirit of democracy and progress in the country. During the Japanese occupation, Japanese educational policies were embodied in Military Order No. 2 in 1942. The Philippine Executive Commission of Education, Health, and Public Welfare, also schools, were reopened. Under the Japanese regime, the teaching of Tagalog, Philippine history, and character education was reserved for Filipinos. Love for work and dignity of labor was also emphasized during this period. During the post-colonial period, education aimed the full realization of democratic ideals and way of life. The civil service eligibility of teachers was made permanent pursuant to RA 1079 in June 15 of 1954. A daily flag ceremony was made compulsory in all schools, including the singing of Philippine National Anthem, pursuant to RA 1265 that was approved on June 11, 1955. Moreover, elementary education was nationalized and matriculation fees were abolished. The life, works, and writings of Jose Rizal, especially Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, are included in the curriculum and should be taught in all levels. Also, the Magna Carta for Teachers was passed into law by virtue of RA 4670. The primary aims of education in this period are to foster love of country, teach duties and citizenship, develop moral character, self-discipline, science, technological and vocational efficiency.
Legal foundation of education. It is important to understand the legal foundation of education for teachers to know the rights, responsibilities, duties, and privileges of the future learners and people who are involved in the education system as well as the future teachers. Understanding the legal basis of education helps every individual involved in the education system develop one's professionalism, human character, and personality. Also, it helps with the guidance of having a deep sense of responsibility. So what is law? Law is a set of rules of behavior, action, or behavior of an individual made and enforced by the state. And why we need law? We need laws because laws are rules that bind all people living in a community. Laws protect our general safety and ensure our rights as citizens. And why it's important to promote the rule of law through education. Education that adheres to the principle of the rule of law can help develop learners' ability to critically understand essential elements of accountability, equality, and fairness. Promoting the rule of law through education helps learners acquire the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that they need to contribute constructively to the society. It allows them to positively shape institutions and their policies, thereby encouraging nonviolent and peaceful avenues of engagement. The 8 types of laws, namely criminal law, corporate law, international law, commercial law, family law, constitutional law, labor law, and intellectual property law. The typologies of law. There are 4 main sources of the Philippine law, namely first, the Constitution, the fundamental and supreme law of the land. Second, the statute, including acts of Congress, municipal charters, municipal legislation, court rules, administrative rules and orders, legislative rules, and presidential insurances. Third, the treaties and convention. These have the same force of authority as statutes. Lastly, judicial decision. Art 8 of Civil Code provides the judicial decisions applying to or interpreting the laws, or the Constitution shall form a part of legal system of the Philippines. Only decisions of its Supreme Court establish jurisprudence and are binding on all other courts. So now, let's proceed to the sources of Philippine educational jurisprudence, namely the Constitution, statute, case law, regulatory law, ordinance, legal opinion, and lastly, resolutions. First, the Constitution. Philippine Constitution of 1987. Establish, maintain, and support a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the needs of the people and society. Establish and maintain system of free public education in the elementary and high school levels, without limiting the natural needs of parents to rear their children. Elementary education is compulsory for all children at all school age. Establish and maintain a system of scholarship grants, student loan programs, subsidies, and other incentives which shall be available to the deserving students in both public and private schools, especially to the unprivileged. Encourage non-formal, informal, and indigenous learning system, as well as self-learning independent and out-of-school study programs, particularly those respond to the community needs, and provide adult citizens, the disabled, and out-of-school youth with training in civics, vocational efficiency, and skills. Second, the statute, Batas Pambansa Bilang 232, the Education Act of 1982. Teachers and school heads are deemed person in authority while in the discharge of lawful duties and responsibilities, and shall therefore be accorded due respect and protection. Rights and duties of parents in the education of children. Right to organize themselves and or with teachers for the discussion for the betterment of the school. Right to access to any official record concerning the children who are under the parental responsibility. Duty to help carry out the educational objectives in accordance with the national goals. Duty to enable their children to obtain elementary education and shall strive to enable them to obtain secondary or higher education in the pursuance of the right formation for the youth. Duty to cooperate with the school in the implementation of the school program. Rights and duties of students. Right to receive primarily through competent instruction, relevant quality education in line with national development goals and conducive to their full development as person with human dignity. Right to freely choose their field of study subject to existing course therein up to their graduation, except in cases of academic deficiency and disciplinary regulation. Right to school guidance and counseling services. Right to access to his own school records, the confidentiality of which the school shall maintain and preserve. Right to the insurance of official certificates, diplomas, transcript of records, grades, transfer credentials, and other similar documents within 30 days of request. Right to publish school newspaper. Right to free expression of opinion and suggestion to the effective channels of communication. Right to form, establish, and join organization.
Case law and jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is the body of case law on a particular topic. A case is a decision rendered by a judge or a justice of the peace after hearing all the sides to a dispute. Regulatory laws. Regulatory laws deal with procedures established by federal, state, local administrative agencies as opposed to laws created by legislative or by court decision. Commonwealth Act Number 177. This act places public school teachers under the civil service rules and regulation, particularly that affects their examination, appointment, transfer, separation, suspension, and reinstatement. This act protects the Teachers Tenure Act Office. This act was approved on November 30, 1936. Commonwealth Act Number 578. This law recognizes supervisors, teachers, and professors of public and recognized private schools as persons in authority. Any person guilty or assault made indirectly or directly upon supervisors, teachers, professor will be subjected to penalty or imprisonment ranging from 6 months and 1 day to 6 years and fine from 500 to 1,000. And this law was approved on June 8, 1940. Republic Act Number 1079. This law provides that civil service eligibility shall be permanent and shall have no limit. This act modifies the present civil service regulation which makes one's eligibility lapse after 2 years of unemployment from the date passing the examination or expansion of 2 years for every 1 year of service in the government. Republic Act Number 1080. This act states that the bar and board examination which require the candidate to have 4 years of college training and 2 years of experience are considered equivalent to the first grade regular examination, and those requiring less than 4 years of preparation are equivalent to the second grade regular examination. This law was approved on April 15, 1954. Presidential Decree Number 688 issued on April 22, 1975, the decree returns to Civil Service Commission the power to give appropriate examination for public school teachers considering the fact that CFC has better facilities than DEC, which continues to administer tests with the CSC's cooperation. Presidential Decree Number 1006 issued September 22, 1976. The decree is known as Decree Professionalizing Teaching. A national board for teaching is created chaired by the DSC Secretary with the chairman of the Civil Service Commission, the Commissioner of the Professional Regulation Commission, and 2 from the private sector to be appointed by the President as the members. Powers and duties of the board members includes, among others, first is to appoint for every examination a set of examiners to prepare board examination for teachers in elementary and secondary levels to be held once a year. Second, to look from the time to time into the condition affecting the practice of teaching profession. And lastly, to adopt such measures as may be deemed for proper enhancement of said profession and maintain the ethical standards. Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics for teachers was issued by the Board for Professional Teachers through Resolution 435 Series of 1997, provides the preamble that teachers are duly licensed professionals who possess dignity and reputation with high moral values as well as technical and professional competence. Furthermore, the code dictates that every teacher shall merit reasonable social recognition, for which purpose he shall behave with honor, dignity at all times and refrain from activities such as gambling, smoking, drunkenness, and other excesses much less illicit. And the teacher must maintain all times dignified personality which could serve as model worthy of emulation by learners, peers, and others. As teacher serve as an example to his or her pupils, consequently, teacher must adhere exacting standards for morality and decency. Teacher, both in his official and personal conduct, must display exemplary behavior. He must freely and willingly restriction on his conduct that might be viewed irksome. The personal behavior of teacher in and outside the classroom must be beyond reproach. They must observe high standard for integrity and honesty. With such high standard of morality and stringent rule of conduct, the teacher must observe not only inside the school but also even outside. An ordinance is an act adopted by a municipal governing body having effect only in the jurisdiction of municipal government. City Ordinance Number 16 Series of 2000, an ordinance amending Section 7 of City Ordinance Number 17 Series of 1999, an ordinance establishing the City Educational Scholarship Program or CESPRO of City of Tagum, Province of Davao del Norte for poor but deserving students and providing regulation for the implementation. City Ordinance Number 545 Series of 2011, focus on education, scholarship, and Ordinance 45 implementation of Section 393, Paragraph B and Section 434, Paragraph 1 of the Local Government Code of 1991 and Article 203 of its implementing rules and regulation respectively granting scholarship privilege for legitimate dependents of the Punong Barangay, Sangguniang Barangay members, Barangay Treasurer, Barangay Secretary, and Sangguniang Kabataan officials of the city.
Educational structure in the Philippines. Education in the Philippines is offered through formal and non-formal systems. Formal education typically spans 14 years and is structured in a 6+4+4 systems. 6 years of primary school, 4 years of secondary school, and 4 years of higher education, leading to a bachelor's degree. So in primary education, primary school education in the Philippines spans 6 years in duration and is compulsory for all students. This level of education is divided into 4-year primary cycle and a 2-year intermediate cycle. In the country's public schools, Filipino children generally begin at school age 6 or 7. However, private school typically starts a year earlier or operate a 7-year curriculum rather than a 6-year curriculum. In the secondary education, although secondary education is not compulsory in the Philippines, it is widely attended, particularly in the more urban areas of the country. Further, there are 2 main types of schools, the general secondary schools and the vocational secondary schools. In general secondary schools, students in this level must take and pass a wide variety of courses or should take all the courses such as in academic and vocational courses. Down to the vocational secondary schools, these tend to offer technical and vocational instruction in one of the 5 major fields such as in agriculture or fishery, trade or technical, home industry, and non-traditional courses with a host of specializations. This type of vocational fields offered by these vocational schools usually depend on the specific regions in which the school is located. In university education, the credit and degree structure of university education in the Philippines bears a striking resemblance to that of the United States. Entrance into Philippine universities and other institutions of higher education is dependent on the possession of a high school certificate of graduation and in some cases on the result of the National Secondary Achievement Test or NSAT, or in many colleges and universities, the results of their own entrance examinations. However, there are 3 degree stages of higher education in the Philippines, which are the bachelor, the master, and the PhD. Down to the educational policies, we have Policy and Research Program. This aims to strengthen evidence-based decision-making through the oversight, promotion, and conduct of policy development, research, and sector monitoring and evaluation. The Policy and Research Program also includes the Basic Education Research Fund, a funding mechanism for DepEd researchers which is managed by the region. DepEd personnel may avail of this grant provided that they are qualified based on the issued guidelines. Next, we have textbooks and other instructional materials. This program aims to provide public schools and learning centers quality text-based learning resources aligned with the K-12 curriculum as primary basis or supplement to teaching and learning processes. Next is the computerization program. This program aims to improve the quality of education by providing public schools with appropriate technologies that would enhance the teaching-learning process and meet the challenges of the 21st century in terms of technological advancement.
Next, we have Learning Tools and Equipment, Science and Math Equipment, or the LTE SME. This aims to provide public schools and learning centers with complete and efficient sets of science and mathematics tools and equipment that complies with the requirements set by the K-12 curriculum. Next, we have the Learning Tools and Equipment, Technical Vocational Equipment, or the LTE TVE. This aims to provide schools with technical vocational packages that are specific to its specializations offered and compliant to the standards of the K-12 curriculum. Next, we have New School Personnel Positions. This program is dedicated towards ensuring an improved proportion of the number of teachers to the number of learners, enhance learning and ease workload of its personnel given the increasing enrollment levels in public schools nationwide. Next is the Inclusive Education Program. This is the core principle of the K-12 Basic Education Program. This promotes the right of every Filipino to quality, equitable, culture-based, and complete basic education. Through inclusive education, all Filipinos will realize their full potential and meaningfully contribute to the building of the nation. The inclusiveness of the K-12 education is also expressed through existing programs such as special education, indigenous people's education, madrasa education, and flexible learning options, including alternative delivery modes and alternative learning system, which addresses the needs of particular learners. The principle of inclusion promotes institutional sensitivity and responsiveness to nature, situation, and realities of our country's learners, and directs the department to proactively address these through the curriculum and the said program. Next is the Support to Schools and Learners Program. We have School-Based Feeding Program. Through the virtue of RA 11037, or the Masustansang Pagkain para sa Batang Pilipino Act, and is one of the components of the National Feeding Program, the program is intended to cater undernourished public school children from kindergarten to grade 6 with the provision of at least one fortified meal for a period of not less than 120 days in a year. Next, we have the Government Assistance and Subsidies. The program aims to improve access to quality secondary education through government extension of financial assistance to deserving elementary school graduates who wish to pursue their secondary education in private schools. Down to the last topic, which is the curriculum and instruction, and which I will only be giving a short overview. So the Philippines has a national curriculum developed by the Department of Education. Schools in the Philippines are divided into kindergarten, elementary, secondary, and senior high is also implemented in Abu Dhabi, Philippine schools. Compulsory core subjects in both elementary and secondary schools include languages, mathematics, sciences, ICT, physical education, and the arts. However, in grades 7 and 8, technology and livelihood education or TLE subjects are also introduced. In senior high schools, the choice of career track defines content of subjects. Typical track include academic, technical, vocational, or livelihood, sports, and arts and design. Students select a specialization track based on their aptitude, interest, and school provision. In the progression of students, entry to kindergarten begins at age 4 to 5. Students complete 12 years of education to receive a senior high school diploma upon completion of academic and non-academic requirements. In the assessments at kindergarten level are conducted through regular teacher observations. SREA or School Readiness Early Years Assessment, ECCD or Early Childhood Care Development Checklist, and other forms of assessment are utilized for this purpose. Statutory national curriculum assessments are administered at the end of elementary and junior phases of education in grades 6 and 10 respectively. Other reliable external assessments are administered to measure students' learning. In grade 12, student achievement is measured through internal assessments as well as the Department of Education Basic Educational Exit Assessment. Following successful completion of academic and non-academic requirements, grade 12 students receive a senior high school diploma and secondary leaving certificate. In the accreditation, schools overseas are accredited and registered by the Commission of Philippine Schools Overseas. Inspectors from the Philippines conduct annual school inspections using defined standards to measure the school quality. Successful schools are granted annual licenses. The Embassy of the Philippines may also dispute a representative, a commonly cultural attaché, to visit schools and assist with quality assurance and accreditation.
So that was the end of our discussion. I hope that you have learned something about our topic for today. I am Cristel Antoinette P. Talion.
I'm Julian S. Sabalones.
I'm Shazamri A. Sarposa.
And I am Kath.
Thank you everyone for listening. See you again on our next discussion. Bye!